All right, let's get this show on the road. All right, everyone, welcome to another edition of Pinto Town Hall. We have an exciting town hall because we just pushed the PI 13, which, among other miscellaneous things, includes the convert up bonus, the dynamic convert up bonus, I should say, uh, which is really exciting. So, we will be talking all about that today. Uh, let's kick this off the way we typically do, hearing from contributors. Then we'll open up the floor, and then I'll talk a bit about some of my thoughts as well. Uh, Frio, how you doing, sir?
Doing well, I'm doing well. Yeah, I mean, this week we got the PI 13 out, like Ben says, it includes the dynamic convert up bonus and a myriad of other things. So it's great to see that going. We were monitoring for the past 2 days and, everything seems fine. There were some front end bugs we had to quickly fix, but otherwise, the backend code looks great. The middleware was great. Front end's great. This week, I'm switching my attention onto two future upgrades. One where we will migrate. Our CBE position in the protocol. And, we'll be doing that via the C gauge. So, one of the beautiful things with the protocol is that we can incentivize an optimal distribution of liquidity based on the seeds. So we will be building a gauge that will slowly migrate the optimal distribution from the CBE portion to a West Eth portion. So that'll be dynamic. The seed will slowly decrease for CVE and increase for Wistif, and that should incentivize people to slowly migrate to Wistif. The second upgrade we would like to do is some sort of pod referral system in which when somebody uh, sells, they can get a referral from somebody, and the referral will get bonus pods. So working on those two things there.
Fabulous. Now that it's all pushed, maybe you could share some insight on the the convert up bonus, the code. It obviously was a months long process
Yeah,
to
I
get
mean, at
this
a
thing
high
up and
level,
running.
one of the
Help us
infrastructure
understand
upgrades
what
we
went into
added,
this.
I think around May, was a gauge system. The first real, I mean, there's been gauges in the protocol all along, starting with the first case system, but, this has been bespoke implementations throughout the years. We've had this case system, recently, not recently, sorry, about last year, we added the C gauge system. And then recently this year, we added a generalized implementation to add any gauge. You know, a gauge in a gauge system is simply a set of data within the contract that changes based on some parameters, specifically in the sunrise function. So since we added that development on adding new features, new data that changes based on the sunrise and based on the system itself, adding those gauges has been much faster. This started with a cultivation factor that after I think it was March, we've all came together and try to figure out how we can make this protocol better. Uh, and this is the start of, I think you coined it the layer four of the Pinto system. So with the layer four, with these new gauges, it was very important to make this composable system in which is very easy to add gauges and more importantly, do it in a very secure way. All these gauges in the worst case, if they were to error out, due to underflow, overflow, due to like parameterization, the worst thing that would happen is that the gauge would shut down. The static values would stay static, nothing would change, and at the worst case, the season would skip that gauge. So for me, it feels very secure. It makes me feel much more comfortable in adding these gauges in a rapid fashion, starting with the cultivation gauge system. You know, Shortly after we added the convert down gauge system, then we updated the cultivation gauge system, which like I said before, it was very easy to add, very easy to upgrade, given the modular factor. of just infrastructure upgrade. Now onto the convert up bonus gauge system. Like we said before, it's very similar to how we kind of architected the cultivation gauge. Specifically, when accounting for cases where the system is oscillating around some certain bonus. So, it's not exactly a copy paste, but I would say, 30% of the cultivation gauge system could have been used for the convert up bonus. Uh, but throughout the journey of creating the convert up bonus, I think we've redesigned it one, maybe one and a half times, I would like to say, in the whole process. First was an initial implementation, and then me and Ben sat down for about a month or so and, really went about it on how to actually make this really, really good. Uh, there's a good, better, best, but we saw with the first implementation, we could do a lot better. And with that, we had to kind of rewrite the convert up gauge system to where it is right now. And happy to say, very happy we did that decision because it feels a lot more clean and feels more in line with the model, what the model wants. So overall, I'm very, very satisfied with how this convert up bonus is not only designed, but written. And yeah, upon reflecting on the past development for a year, it really has changed. I think previously, we've been upgrading stuff, which has like major, major benefits. And, now we're really, really fine tuning what we're changing, if that makes sense. We're really fine tuning how the model reacts based on certain states. And, it's a joy to see that occur over the years of development. So, yeah, very, very happy.
Thanks for all that color, Frio. I know how hard you've worked to get this thing set up properly, and uh, yeah, it's great to see the fruits of that labor. I think we're at an interesting point because the back end of the system is implemented in a really modular way, such that, like in this case, uh, most of the work was on creating the interface and creating a way for people to actually use the thing, whereas just creating the thing was, I don't want to say easier, but more efficient, more streamlined. So really awesome stuff. Thanks for all the hard work here. All right, let's continue hearing from the contributors. Pinto Pirate, how are you, sir?
GM farmers, I'm doing well. Yeah, so we got the convert up bonus. It's now deployed. Systems they're running well. There were little issues here and there after we deployed it, but we got that all resolved quickly. And yeah, at this point we're just excited to start seeing some orders coming in and getting executed. Everything for that is to be tracked on like on the bots on Discord. So now, in like the tractor channel, any activity there will appear. And yeah, just like some info about like the convert up bonus as well. Like when someone does a convert, you'll now be able to see like in the silo channel, well, and in the tractor channel as well, like some information about like how much of a bonus they got, like both in terms of like how much stock per PDV, and then also PDV received the bonus. So yeah, but as always, like if there's other stuff that, maybe we didn't think of, or just in general that, people, find that's interesting, like relating to this upgrade that they want to see, whether it's like charts for, or, just like, information in some of the Discord channels, definitely feel free to drop us a note on that. And we'll be looking at that. So yeah, other than that, I've still just kind of like a ongoing thing I've been working on that you probably heard me talk about before a few times. I'm still making progress on it. The updates to the inflows and outflows tracking. Um, and so basically we'll just start tracking like at both the like for each transaction, we'll start tracking kind of like at the farmer level and at the protocol level whether there's actually like funds being added or removed from the contracts, like versus maybe they like move money from the silo like into the field, um we'll have kind of like that tracking, and that'll end up kind of like resulting in some changes on the big chart that we have, as well as enabling like some other analysis that we might want to do in the future if we want to have like a chart like for a user to kind of see like how their position has changed over time. I think having that data will make that a little bit easier to do. So yeah, it's coming.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Mr. Pirate. Some of these data points, personally, I think will be quite helpful when it comes to overall system analysis. And so, uh, I mean, we're at an interesting point trying to monitor the system and understand really how people are acting. Thank you very much. I see a new face in the community here. They just hopped out. Head fake, head fake. Um, all right. Uh, let's hear from Pintacito. What's up, sir?
What's up, team? Great to hear from everybody. Really awesome to hear about the level of thought that was going into the dynamic convert up bonus system. It's been great to see how much hard work went into it. I know it took a while to implement, and so it's very exciting to have it live. Uh, on my end, have just been continuing with content production, moving forward on a grant application, which looks to be moving in a positive direction, and have been focused this week on a suite of documentation for an upcoming product launch that is complementary to Pinto. So excited about that. I think should be sharing more information on that sometime soon, but hopefully it will be an ignition to get some activity and utility for Pinto. So I think you've spoken a bit about it, Ben, but quite excited there.
Thanks, Pintacito. All right. On my end, uh, not too much. Uh, this document suite is pretty much good to go, and we're we're chugging here. So next up is this major UI overhaul, which we're in the process of getting underway, and things are things are in a good spot. So it's interesting to be here stable at 60 something cents, 70 something cents. But generally I find it to be quite an interesting time on the farm. Uh all right. So before I start talking about the convert up bonus, the dynamic convert up bonus and its implications and some other stuff, uh, let's open up the floor. I see we have three Yakov here. Welcome, sir. Congrats on all your recent success. Uh, I know you were mentioning some idea of a lender of last resort in the economics channel. Happy to chat about that for a bit if you want. Also see some of our other community members here. So the floor is open. All right. Um, so at any time, people feel free to unmute, chime in, but I'm going to talk a bit about this dynamic convert bonus. So if we go way back in the day, uh, where this idea came from, we've been trying to figure out for more than a year, maybe 2 years now. I think even more honestly. Like if I go back, I remember Brendan and myself. Maybe like 3 year, yeah, almost 3 years ago, like 2.5 years ago, when we were really in the weeds on what would become Beanstalk 3. Uh, we we were trying to figure out how to implement this convert up bonus, and I guess any convert bonus, but in particular the convert up bonus, as the convert down bonus is less relevant to the model in its current form, given that people have an overwhelming preference to convert up and hold LP. To convert down and hold LP, which we ran into a roadblock with this idea, which is that you have this manipulation vector where, let's say that there's an incentive to convert from A to B, and you hold B. The if the bonus to convert from A to B exceeds the stock that you have on B already, the grown stock, you can basically arbitrage it. Maybe I shouldn't say manipulation vector, an arbitrage vector, where you just withdraw B, you convert it into A. I should say you sell it into A outside of the system, then you deposit A, and then you convert it into B within the system. And this was quite a tricky issue to tackle from the perspective of, basically the original thinking, and I'll get to our solution in a second, but the original thinking was, okay, like, well, then you need to have a cap on the converts of the minimum stock of B, uh, like the bonus to convert to B would have to be the minimum grown stock on any B deposit in the system. And because people are depositing regularly, it basically made it such that the bonus would be capped at a very low minimum, making it generally unviable. And then the thought was, well, maybe we can have it be like per PDV, so the system would then have to track uh, like the ordering of deposits based on grown stock, and that was computationally inefficient, which has been somewhat resolved by migrating to base. But ultimately, still, the bonus would have been very low, and there's no reason to accept that in a free market like this one, that a very low bonus that's constantly being reset as a result of people depositing new value would ever really have a meaningful incentive in the system, particularly compared to stuff like the seed gauge, where uh, there's quite a meaningful amount of stock difference realized over time. So the idea was sort of put on ice for a while, and we talked about it with contributors and really tried to figure out what else can we do, and we were in this roadblock. And I don't, it was sometime, as Frio said, in March, when a bunch of the contributors got together to figure out what was next, how to continue to improve the model, that it might have been Ford Pinto, uh, it might have been NATO. I think it was Ford Pinto, but I'm making it up. Said, well, why don't we just put a cap on the individual deposit? So instead of doing an overall system wide measurement, just treat the individual deposit. And this was quite brilliant and basically freed us from the initial constraint that the system had to keep some track and implement some minimum. In fact, this was such a strong solution that now there is no need to put a limit on the convert up or down if it ever gets implemented bonus. The bonus amount can float entirely freely, much like the temperature. And instead, we can just cap individual deposits that are converted based on the grown stock per PDV of the value converted. And obviously, if you now go back to that arbitrage vector where you would take the deposit B, withdraw it, sell it into A, and then deposit A, deposit A would have no grown stock. And so this would mean that then you're not eligible for any bonus. So this entirely eliminates that issue, which is quite wonderful. And then the question became, okay, well, how do we properly implement a dynamic bonus? And this is something that uh, at the time in March, that was also when we were implementing, I should say, designing the soil snowball, the cultivation system. And the idea there was that through limiting supply, we actually have the potential to create a more efficient market. And then obviously, and what we do in the field now is we ramp up soil supply over time. And this was something that has demonstrated quite a bit of efficacy in the field. And so the thinking is that uh, we should take a similar approach to the silo now, where if we're going to have some sort of fluctuating, free floating rate that incentivizes certain behavior, in this case, converts in the field of course lending, that it would make the most sense to do something similar. And so what we've done is we've created effectively uh, a mirror. It's not a perfect mirror. Uh, Maybe a sister is a better way to call it. System to the cultivation system, where now the convert capacity, which is the amount of PDV that's eligible for the bonus, much like how the soil framework currently works, where it starts with a low capacity and then once demand is met, ramps up. Uh, the amount of converts that are eligible for the bonus will also ramp up. And with respect to the bonus itself, much like the temperature, and it is slightly different at the margin, but quite similar to the temperature. The system measures demand from season to season and then decides to increase or decrease the bonus per PDV. I think, one of the things that was raised, or maybe before I get to this, overall, it's quite a complex system, is the truth. Um, it's quite complex. And we're at a point where, in order to make significant improvements to the model, it's hard not to add additional significant complexity to the system. And when we were originally designing Beanstalk, one of the design principles that we held quite closely was to keep things as simple as possible, not to shy away from complexity when necessary. Obviously, we implemented the stock system, which at the time was quite complex for DeFi protocols. And at the same time, there's no unnecessary complexity. And so to me, this improvement does represent quite a change in the state of things, where we're with the soil snowball, with the cultivation system in the field, that was a really complex component of the mechanism, and it's worked quite well. I think that was a data point that demonstrated, like, when things are properly designed, even if there is a significant amount of complexity to them, it's quite a powerful tool. And personally feel very lucky that we have developers like Frio, who are able to implement these incredibly complex things in an efficient fashion, making it possible. But the creation of a similarly complex system in the field really does show, like, how far this protocol has come. And even though we're still small, even though the larger crypto community still hasn't really woken up to the state of things here, if you will, uh, to me, it's very exciting. And we don't know how this is going to work. As I've been thinking more and more about this, process, like how the incentives actually work. One of the things that I think might not work great is in the field, we have a FIFO repayment system. And so there's a real cost in practice to waiting to sow because someone else could sow before you. And this is one of the key incentives that go into the design of the field that actually facilitate people to lend to the system. And so obviously stock is not the same as pods. It's an entirely fungible asset. Um, and so what this means for the efficacy in terms of getting people or incentivizing people to convert in the silo, I don't know, honestly. Only time will tell. Then there's a second issue, which is these converts. Like right now, and I think Ford Pinto was the one that raised it maybe a month ago or so in one of these town halls. He said the seed gauge basically has made it such that there's no seeds on CBBTC deposits, and yet people have not converted. So is that an indication that people really want CBBTC, which seems unlikely, or are they just not paying attention? And so on the one hand, the dynamic convert up bonus, part of the reason why it took so long on the non backend side is because we also implemented the the convert order book, which if we go back to what happened in the field, in fact, when we implemented the cultivation system, the original version, without the field tractor support, without the soil order book, in practice, people weren't participating because it was too high friction. And so maybe like the B side of this upgrade, which isn't necessarily detailed in the PI, for example, because it's not a protocol change, is we've rolled out tractor support for the converts. And this is a huge deal in terms of decreasing the friction for people to use the system, a massive deal, frankly. And the question now is, okay, like, since we're removing the friction entirely for people to convert, or almost entirely, they just have to create and sign a tractor requisition. The the question is, okay, well, are people going to do it? Are people just checked out? Uh, it's unclear. So obviously, I think this is a problem that if Pinto goes through a growth cycle and we have a new inflow of capital and people are participating more, this particular part of the problem should get resolved, if you will, from the perspective of we would expect newer deposits to participate and to maybe sign the requisition. So even if they stop paying attention as much, um, they're able to benefit. They're able to convert and basically perform the optimal actions from their perspective with respect to seeds and the bonus. But, and I think it's a big but, one of the major downsides of Tractor is that everything is public. And one of the fears that I have with respect to the public nature of Tractor is that essentially, let's say that now we have a convert up order for a significant amount of PDV, and the convert up order is going to hit when a certain convert up bonus per PDV is met. And essentially, people will know that the convert is about to happen and can effectively game the system potentially, where the PDV, the convert bonus per PDV will be increasing to that threshold, and that threshold will be public as it's currently done. And essentially, someone could buy up immediately before the convert and sell after the convert. So the mitigating factor here is that the tractor operators actually have to execute the system, but I guess anyone can execute it. And in theory, the tractor operators could also perform this extraction of value. And so, on the one hand, it's quite an elegant system that we've created from an incentive perspective. I think there's room for improvement. Uh, it's unclear what that improvement would be, but I think we've identified some potential issues here, particularly with the FIFO thing. But on the other hand, it's an imperfect system. And unlike the soil order book, where projecting your tractor order, the only real implication is that someone might not participate in the order book, conceal the order, and then jump in front of you, which is a risk. But it's not a risk that value gets taken out of the system. It's just a risk to individuals that may, at the margin, discourage them from participating in the soil order book. Uh, Whereas in this case, there is a sandwich style attack or extraction available, and it's not great. So the the solution to this, and I think in my case, I want to see what happens. Not to say that we don't expect that people would want to do this type of manipulation, but I still think it's interesting to see it play out in practice before we make a change to the structure of Tractor, for example, that is less aligned with our open source and permissionless values, which would be that we can make it such that people have an option, which we would, of course, if we went this route, recommend or sort of by default suggest on the front end to uh, to when they sign the requisitions, to instead of posting that requisition to the network such that everyone can see it, to send it to some private server. And there's an interesting trade-off space here where the private server, if it's just some dude's computer, right? Like tractor operators can say, hey, this is my server, send it to me, I'll execute it. That tractor operator could still do the manipulation. And so it's an imperfect system. Obviously, in an open environment, we would expect the manipulation to occur or the extraction to occur. In this permission semi-private tractor setting, there's a reasonable expectation that the operator would not perform the extraction, because if they did, people would cancel their requisitions and then send the requisitions to another tractor operator that's not going to extract the value. Uh, so at some level, there's a check on the tractor operator's ability to do that. But the ideal solution would be to uh, basically have these order books be executed by a T. So in that way, there's a relatively strong. So a T is a trusted execution enclave, which is a special type of computing hardware primitive that offers generally confidentiality, meaning that the system can run uh, with relative efficiency computationally, but it functions as a black box. So you send stuff in an encrypted form into the T, it gets decrypted within the T and processed within the T, but it's quite difficult to extract what's going on within the T itself. So in theory, we could have now a private order book, uh, which would do away with this manipulation vector. Now we would be trusting the T for integrity, which is another guarantee that it provides, although a bit of a weaker guarantee than the confidentiality guarantee that it provides, but it still does a decent job. And obviously, people could, if their tractor requisitions were not getting filled, they could issue a public complaint. There's a variety of processes we can put in place here. So all of this is a long-winded way of saying this this dynamic convert up bonus represents a really meaningful milestone in the grand scheme of things, and it's quite exciting. Uh, but at the same time, in the interest of getting data, we haven't necessarily implemented all of the bells and whistles, uh, like this off-chain, or sorry, private server to do the tractor requisitions, a T-based tractor requisition system. But we have spent a lot of time considering all the options and the design space and trade-offs there. And so we're prepared, obviously, in the instance where things are going well and value starts to be extracted, we'll be in a position where with relatively minimal overhead, we're able to try to make a migration to minimize the value from being extracted. So, uh, yeah, a bit of a long talk here. I mentioned last week that, and I'm still a bit under the weather, but I mentioned last week that I did want to talk quite extensively about this dynamic convert up bonus.
Yeah, I'll chime
So
in on the technical
that's
side.
most
Yeah,
of
I
what
mean,
I
even
wanted to
though,
share.
like Ben said, this
Going to open up
problem
the floor now to
is
see if there are questions,
unavoidable
comments,
when you
thoughts,
publish requisitions on
etc.
the blockchain. On the protocol end, we have tried to minimize the sandwich attack vector. In the blueprint itself, there's a slippage protection variable where we utilize the multi-flow pumps manipulation resistant values to try to see if someone is trying to front run the transaction. So, that's one vector in which we try to minimize this. I say minimize because it's not preventable. The second way we try to minimize this attack is unlike the field where soil is issued at the start of the season, the capacity in which you get a bonus is actually distributed over time. So, right now there's a 50 PDV of capacity. We have a ramp up period in the first 30 minutes where it goes from zero capacity to 50. If assuming the tractor operators convert efficiently, you would have multiple tractor orders over the course of the 30 minutes, such that if someone wanted to manipulate, at least they would have exposure for 30 minutes. Obviously that's not the best solution. We still have this problem where someone is basically, able to foresee 30 minutes of buy pressure, but at least it minimizes the sandwich attack. Just wanted to chime in on those thoughts.
Thank you very much, Frio. All right, the floor is open, folks. Thoughts, questions, comments, concerns? All right, so I think that's the most important thing to talk about today. The price is relatively stable around 70 cents. Um, for me, the the most interesting thing to watch is how the system has performed relative to the general crypto market, where, as much as it would be better for the system to be oscillating at its value target, and this is one of the reasons why, to me, the this convert up bonus can be quite a meaningful factor here. Um, the the reality of the situation is that the system is quite low volatility. Um, so I think we can do a better job. Like right now, there's really no reason, at least as far as I can tell, that we're not at $1 from a raw economics perspective, if you know what I'm saying. Uh, so I think we do need to figure out the incentives and get the thing to a point where it's like, okay, uh, this is a this is a stable at its value target. That to me is quite a meaningful data point. Um, but it would be wrong to suggest that this isn't a very low volatility currency. And one of the things that I think has been quite encouraging is this Zcash revival, where people are waking up to privacy as a value of crypto, and a currency that many people haven't paid much attention to is now one of the most popular and fastest rising. And in my mind, it's only a matter of time before people pay attention to our cause here. So that's been encouraging. And all we can really do is focus on continuing to minimize the volatility. Obviously, we had a bit of a crash over the past month from being in the mid 90s now to being just around 70. And this was related to the general crypto crash. The downside volatility was exacerbated by we did have a couple withdrawals, one around 60,000 in just about a month ago. And I guess maybe not a month ago, a couple weeks ago. And since then, we've had a couple smaller withdrawals. But from my perspective, it's very hard not to look at the overall functioning of the structure and see there's no bank runs. Even when we have a major withdrawal like $60,000, there's no further like cascade there. Maybe not no further cascade, but it's a very minimal cascade. There's no bank run, and the the protocol is relatively low volatility. So the launch of the convert bonus for me will be quite an interesting data point. Hopefully we'll get some general resolution on Ford Pinto's question about are people just not paying attention. Um, but it's in my mind, it's a calm time on the farm. We haven't had mints in quite some time, but we're still early. It still hasn't been a year. We're coming up on a year since this was deployed, but we're not there yet. And this upgrade marked the 14th upgrade this year. So the devs have been hard at work. On the one hand, I know I've talked about how when we originally launched Beanstalk, the ship was sinking, and so we put out an upgrade like every 2 weeks. But if we look now at the Pinto progress over the past year, 14 upgrades, it's pretty good too. More than one a month, and not all of them have been significant, but it's quite meaningful and exciting. So yeah, it's a good time to be a farmer in my mind. People keep stacking their stock, and yeah, it's a fun time. So, all right, gonna open up the floor one more time, see if there are any questions, comments, thoughts, things to talk about. Otherwise, we'll wrap this bad boy up. All right. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate everyone for being here. Thanks to the contributors for getting this incredible upgrade out, and we'll see everyone next week. And I'm sorry about
Yeah, guys.
the change in time. This was my mea culpa with the scheduling. So we'll do my best to do better on this. I was double booked and I didn't realize it. So apologies for that. All right, everyone. Thank you very much. We'll talk again soon. Take care.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.